This is episode 104, Intimacy and Relationships. You have problems at home in your relationships that you are not solving. It happens to most of us. And how do we fix it? This is what we're talking about today. Stay with us.
This is the Elevate Construction Podcast, delivering remarkable content for workers, leaders, and companies in construction wanting to take their next step. Get ready to step out of your comfort zone with Jason Schroeder as he encourages you to do better, live a remarkable life, and expect more. Let's go.
My name is Jason Schroeder, your host, here with Brandon Montero to talk to you about intimacy and relationships. Before we get started, please share this podcast. If you're on the Apple platform, for example, please make a comment, rate it, and leave us some feedback. For podcasts, engagement is key because these podcasts are about you, not me, and not us. We really want to be solving your problems, your issues, and taking care of your needs. So we have Brandon Montero with us here today, and we're going to try something new. We're going to have a discussion and try to get a little conflict and make this a little bit interesting. So why the topic of intimacy in construction? Why this topic for construction professionals? So Brandon, I'll ask you, how is that topic relevant for people in the construction industry for our target audience? What would you say?
I think it's extremely relevant because it's already difficult enough for the majority of construction men to talk about emotions or their feelings on any level. Intimacy is typically something that's pretty taboo to everybody almost. And so getting involved in that topic with this particular crowd, probably a little bit more on the out there side.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what I would say is we have to be healthy at home to be healthy at work, right? And you and I, we've seen people at boot camps come up to us and say, "You've saved our marriage. We're so much closer. I give now. I focus on the needs of my spouse, my wife, my husband, and things are so much better." And I bet 80% of the men that I talk to, sorry, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I just want to clarify that that's related to boot camp topics and, professional development, not necessarily intimacy.
Well, okay. Okay. But personally,
just those particular comments. That's all.
Hey, no. Okay. So just to clarify, if you ever go to our boot camps, you're not going to be a part of sex therapy, but I will say that I think at least 80% of men struggle with this. Anybody that I talk to one-on-one and ask how home life is going, it comes up. It's a big deal at church. It's a big deal at work. It's a big deal everywhere with the people that you're surrounded with. And so probably we ought to figure it out, because if you go in and look at a man's needs, number one is physical intimacy. Number one for a woman is attention, attentiveness, quality time. Anyway, so let's kick this topic off, Brandon. Let's get some good, interesting content here. Let's talk about how can we be healthier in our physical intimacy in our relationships at home.
One of the topics that we discussed last time was the concept of giving 100% when you're at home, and what that might look like to your kids, as far as maybe making sure that you gave them all the attention that they wanted, read that book to them before they went to bed, and really just showed up in their lives. The same way in our relationships with our girlfriends, boyfriends, wives, husbands, are we showing up for them and meeting their emotional needs? And, right in there with emotions, and what makes a person feel whole, what makes a person feel seen is intimacy. So just thinking about how do we show up on the intimate level? How are we satisfying our partners, our spouses on that level from an emotional standpoint? Are we showing up there? I'm going to use the term awake when it comes to what their needs are there? And just thinking about that a little bit more, like what is our actual plan to make that happen?
So just to kind of kick this off for listeners a little bit, what happens if we don't? So I like that concept. I think so there's two things on my mind right now. What happens if we don't? And is it an obligation? That's like the whole thing. Anytime anybody gets into an argument, they're like, are you being controlling? Is that an obligation? Is that something I owe you? Are you not happy on your own? Talk a little bit about that for me. I see you smiling.
We're not. Is it an obligation? Well, we're not obligated to do anything.
Yeah.
But there are certainly consequences for what we do and what we don't do. There's, if I'm going to go back to just talking about our kids for a second. If they asked us to read them a story and we didn't, is there an emotional repercussion for that action? Of course, they'll remember. Maybe they weren't that interested in me right now, or maybe they didn't have time for me, but they'll remember that feeling when it comes to how mom or dad addressed them at the end of the night. And when we think about our relationships, are we making time for them intimately? And I could say that that's one of those things that you could do, that you can do something about that throughout the day. Intimacy isn't necessarily sex. It could be as little as, running your hand across your spouse's, or I'm going to say spouses, but, boyfriend, girlfriend, your partner, whoever that might be.
Yeah.
Across their shoulders, or putting your arm around them, or, sneaking up behind them for a kiss on the neck at the sink. Like, are you doing things that develop some sort of closeness, some sort of intimacy, and proving that you see them as a sensual being throughout the day? Or do you just do nothing and then you show up when it's time to have sexual relations? Because there's a definite feeling in the way that's developed that will happen in the mind or in the emotional state of your partner.
And before we go on, there's something on my mind. By the way, I've got a million questions. I'm gonna really control my desire to speak and shut up a little bit. You're more of a thinking type person, unless I'm wrong. Well, hold on, bear with me. You've been in some relationships where your partner is more like me, more emotional, a little bit unstable. Maybe you're not unemotional, but you're more stable. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would say that I'm more stable. I'm extremely empathetic, and I put empathy on the emotional side of the board.
Okay.
But I don't come to snap feelings, or I don't have an emotion, and maybe that emotion kind of overshadows the actual facts in a situation. Not the facts, but the actual the things that are happening sometimes can get overshadowed by the emotion. I feel this way is bigger than what's happening necessarily. And so, yes, although I try really hard to be empathetic.
Well, okay, so you're a great guy, you're a huggable guy, so I give you credit for that. I'm more bipolar, emotional, maybe in the right kind of movie they'd call me a little bit psycho. Like, I'm like, why'd you say that? What does that mean? Do you not love me? Like, I immediately go there. So for me, if somebody doesn't touch me, and if not somebody, if my spouse doesn't touch me, or there's no physical intimacy there, if that's not a healthy realm of my life, I just don't feel loved. And so my question is, for you, how do you feel? I'm more emotional about things. I tie touch, physical intimacy, that time, that vulnerability, the sacrifice that somebody's, maybe not sacrifice, but the openness that somebody's giving me as love. Like touch, love. Intimacy, love. Being with me, love. Openness, love. I don't associate words. I don't associate gifts. I don't associate logic. Nothing. So when I don't get that, I don't feel loved. And so my curiosity is for somebody that's more normal, more balanced, more stable like you, what does not having a healthy relationship look like for you?
I really think it's the same. And I imagine it's almost the same for most people, because we all have different facets of how we want to be loved, how we want to be viewed. And I just think that feeling like you are, have a sexual presence for the person who is your partner is just relevant to anyone who would say that, yes, sexuality or physicality is a part of the facets that make them. And I'm going to quantify that by saying maybe an older couple that is in their 70s, 80s, maybe those physical things aren't so much of what where they go to find emotional satisfaction. But people who are still in the realm of I'm a physical person, that's what's important to me. I feel like that probably weighs heavier in the way that they want to be viewed by their partner, and the way they just want to show up as a presence. And the way I'll say as a presence is because sometimes you want to feel just attractive as a person, and if you take care of yourself, you're doing this or that, or your spouse or your partner gets ready, wants to look beautiful, it's mostly generally and likely for you, but also they want to show that they're a person who is relevant to the world. So I feel like just being seen from that, in the light of physicality is kind of big to everybody.
So if I get off topic, will you promise to rein me in? But I've got one more question. And if it's off topic, just like kick me on the shin. Tell me, like, are we good? Are we good? Okay. So we're going to stay focused. So there were two things on my mind. So one of them is, there's this, and this is a really dramatic concept, meaning like there's a lot of drama surrounded around this. I don't even know if I said that right, but looks is important to guys. Like you'll talk to marriage therapists, and they're like, having an attractive spouse for a man is, and women too, but mainly for men, is a big deal. And so people will say, and I've heard people say this, are you objectifying me? Am I obligated to look like that? And that goes back to the story with the children, right? But it's a bigger deal than people think. How do we respond? What would you say to people that don't think it's a big deal, or think it's objectification, or that it might even tie to, this dark side of the world, this rape culture, where somebody says, well, she looked like that, or he looked like that, and so that's what they were wanting. There's a broad spectrum here. What would your answer be to justify why looks might be important, and that it's okay and healthy? I know it's a big topic, but
well, I'm going to start at the end there and go to the with the prevalence, or at least the fight against rape culture today. A person should be able to control themselves. Amen. And there's no outside input or stimulus that should take away your ability to control yourself.
I agree.
I hope that I can say this without getting in trouble. I've been told something at work before and thought to myself, I would like to just pick this person up and just throw them out the window. And then I think in my head, let me just take that little bit of advice, and maybe some of it hits home and maybe some of it doesn't. And let me think about it. And then I'll say, okay, I appreciate that. Yeah. And I'll move on. You just need to be able to control yourself as a human being. So that whole thing about she looked this way, she looked that way, I'm not a fan of that. I think it's a total, societal double standard where men can do what they want. Nobody ever saw a guy, washing his car with his shirt off and was like, I can rape him because he's dressed like he wants it. Like, yeah, that's crap. So that's how I feel about that.
Yep. Okay.
Super clear. Yeah. Going back to the attractive thing, I want to go back to society a little bit. I think that society makes it okay, or if you watch almost any sitcom, the girl, the wife, the girlfriend, whoever is not that we should be rating people, but I'm going to say maybe she's somewhere between a 6 to an 8, and then it's okay. Yeah. Okay. Society. It wasn't me. It was
it wasn't you.
And then the husband is, he's a little bit dopey, and he doesn't tuck in his shirt, and his hair is messy, and maybe he is a little overweight, or different things. They just hold a really different standard, and that standard is projected to us all the time by society, where, hey, wife, you better keep these looks up to a certain point, but the male, he just is the breadwinner, or he does whatever else that he's bringing to the family. But again, in sitcoms, he's almost bringing nothing except comedic relief, and the wife is the mainstay of the household. Like there's some pretty interesting cultural stuff at play there for sure. But I would say, I think it's just as relevant to either side. I think if you asked any woman, would you like your spouse to touch it up a little bit, or maybe hit the gym a couple extra days, or go for a jog with you, or participate in some of the things that you're doing to better yourself? You would get a hard yes, I think. So my thought there is that it could totally be something done by both sides. It's just not the societal norm for men to feel as concerned about it, because they feel that they're bringing other qualities, maybe like breadwinning or security, or different things that are like promoted as masculine qualities. But as society progresses, those, who's actually bringing those qualities to the household, it changes a lot as well.
Hey, just a thought there. I think we would agree that unhealthy the word objectifying, I think we would say objectification is a bad thing. If I'm I am a man, but if I'm a man and I expect my spouse to be beautiful and look nice and everything, just because we respect ourselves, and I do the same, I trim, my facial hair the way I want it, my hair, I dress nicely, I'm careful, and that's a mutual respect. I can see where that's a whole lot healthier than what you're talking about, where I'm like, that's not a standard. I make you hold that standard because I'm objectifying you. And the other one seems more based on respect for self, and appreciation of beautiful things. I like that.
I agree.
And you've blown my mind with this whole kid example, because, and not to go back, we'll move on. But when you think about, are you obligated? When I feel sometimes a little bit obligated to read a story to my kids, but I want to, right? And if I don't, I do feel a little guilty because I want to give. But if I do, I don't resent them. If I spend time, even if I don't want to do it, I don't resent my child for doing that. It's a beautiful experience because I'm trying to leave a lasting impression. And how many of us would be better off in our physical intimacy, not thinking that somebody's taking something from us and resenting it, but thinking, I've just created a bond there and I wanted to give it freely. I'm not begrudgingly let it be taken. So, I mean, mind blown with I'm wanting to disagree to get some conflict in this discussion. But
I've got some thoughts on that for sure.
Well, before we go there, can give me advice, or the audience advice, anyone advice, some actionable steps. How can we have a more remarkable relationship when it comes to physical intimacy? What thoughts do you have, or whatever you want to say? I'm not trying to be controlling.
No, and it actually ties into the thought that I had a moment ago, and even goes back to the concept of, are we both mutually taking care of ourselves and other things? And what you mentioned about resentment, or feeling like we're doing something from our heart, not out of an obligation necessarily. Mm-hmm. But think about this. If you're building intimacy with your partner throughout the day, and you're showing that you are close to them, that you're attracted to them, that you view them as a sexual presence, you build up their emotional state in that way, so they already feel connected to you. And then when it's time for a more intimate scenario, it's not like you're only coming to them for sex. And I think when we talk about, I'm sorry, I'm just losing the word right now. When we talk about resentment, a partner could come to think that you have sex with them to fulfill your sexual urge, because you don't show them intimacy and attraction, or show them that they're attractive to you throughout the day. So it's not about them. It's not about their attraction. It's not that you see them and you're just like, what a snack I married, and you're just, thinking about them all day long. It's, I have a sexual urge now. You're my partner. You're not obligated to fulfill this urge, but, just saying the words, you can see how different it would feel to the person receiving it. Yeah. And so showing them that, that connection throughout the day, and I would say, again, intimate connection, closeness, attraction, all of those things, which goes back to one more step. Do you want your partner to be attracted to you? Then are you doing things that you feel like could help make you healthier, happier, more attractive to your partner? Yeah. And that could be your mood, the way you show up at home from a mood standpoint, whether you're, exercising, keeping yourself healthy, you'd like to stick around for your family for a long time, the way that you present yourself from your clothes, do you try to match? Are things well put together? Or are you just like, I don't really care? That means that you don't really care how they view you sexually or from an attraction standpoint. And then that means that when it's time to have intercourse, you're just like, I don't feel like I should have put any work into this from a build-up standpoint. This is a commodity that you owe me because we're married.
And then it's taking, right? And I just want to add to what you said, especially if you're talking to your spouse in their love language and continually dating them. right? Then it's going to work. You're not expecting something in return. You go give it. You're talking to them in their language. You're treating them just like you did when they're dating. Then you're not taking. There's probably some reciprocity. There's some love, some appreciation that makes those situations more built with love, right, than taking. I agree. I love that.
I agree. Should we talk about love languages a little bit? I feel that that's a pretty widely known concept, but do you feel like it's worth talking about to some extent?
I think it's definitely worth talking about because, and my wife and I have had this discussion a couple of times. And so just so you know, like, so my love languages are touch and words of affirmation. I just want to feel significant, right? And from a sustainable point in leadership in life, I know I have to try and get away from that more and more, but she intentionally, we schedule, and I don't, you mentioned something about this, but we schedule time for physical touch and intimacy, which sounds robotic, but because it's not naturally her love language, it works to do that. That's what works for us. I'm always naturally touching and like emotionally attracted or wanting to love up on her, or even just to hug one of my kids in a normal, affectionate way. And then she actually, to give me words of affirmation, she actually keeps a little notes. We have a shared notes file because it's so not natural for her to say things. She'll write down every day something nice about me, and oh my gosh, it just fills up my tank. And I do things for her, but it's not like this whimsical, romantic, like happens spontaneously type thing. So
Yeah.
I would love your thoughts on that. Go ahead, Sven.
Well, I think it's really important, and your approach to it, I think, is excellent because, like we talked about before, what you do is what you do. So if you make time for something, if something is a priority to you and you make it a priority, then it will be something that you do. And if you leave something up to chance, then it could be something that you don't do. So it's definitely relevant. But going back to the love language conversation, just like a mentor or a good leader or a good manager needs to look at the learning style of someone that they're mentoring or teaching. Maybe the mentor is somebody who really likes to talk and do some sort of like oral presentation. And as they're doing it, they're noticing that the person that they're teaching is like trying to draw a picture of everything that they're talking about. Hey, mentor, you need to start teaching him with pictures. Go, whatever you're talking about, go stand at the whiteboard and do it with pictures now.
Yeah.
And it should be the same way in our relationship, where we realize that the person that we're attempting to show our love with our version of love, or what we think love feels like and looks like, we can see how they project love back towards us.
Yeah.
Because they're showing us their language, and love them in that way. Otherwise, we could just be, doing different things that are like, this is how I want to be. You're pushing on them. This is how I want to be loved. So it doesn't feel like love to them. It feels like some sort of a need, or some sort of a, it's almost like a task that you're giving them. You're coming at them with all of this energy, but it doesn't mean love to them. So looking at the way that they naturally love us and trying to respond to them in that way. And so when you're talking about that document that you guys have created, and just coming up with ways to facilitate communicating with each other in your love languages is such a strong approach. And then, are you leaving it up to chance, or did you create a way that ensures that you're doing that? And it sounds like that's what you're doing. I would recommend that to anybody, even younger couples that are maybe, struggling with work-life balance or different things. Like, hey, don't get too far out of whack. You need to make sure that your priorities are prioritized. And sometimes that means scheduling. Sometimes that means coming up with a scenario in which this is when we do what we want to do.
This is over the top. I really hope people are enjoying this podcast because, you and I don't want to be too vanilla by agreeing too much, but you and I, we coach mostly 25 to 35-year-olds. That's not discrimination against a protected class. It just accidentally happens that way. We're trying to nurture and mentor people up in the construction industry. And how many times, Brandon, do you and I see a young man or young woman in their marriage, And how often do they verbally and visibly express and show suffering? It's and nobody's there coaching them. We don't learn at church. We don't learn at home. So that's the biggest thing. I'm going to go on a rant if you'll give me time for it. Nobody teaches this stuff. Like, and I bet when somebody listens to this podcast, they're like, what is the Elevate Construction podcast talking about intimacy for? But I think we got to talk about it. Who's going to tell our young men and women, newly married, in a relationship, whatever, with their partner, that this is the way you can do this before they start to separate and get a divorce and all of those other bad things? God forbid they don't already have kids before they separate. I think it's just a big deal, because and going back to the book, when you read the 5 love languages, I think the first impression is, oh, I will give these love languages and he or she will give them back and everything's happy. But I don't think that's the case. I think that it still might be a little unnatural. I think people are like, yeah, but I don't even think that way. Now that I know it, fine. Like, now I'm kind of pigeonholed, but like, what do I do about it now? But it changes from something that's still frustrating into, oh, this is beautiful, when it becomes intentional. And so I love that. Are you the same way, Brandon? Or like, is there some intentionality there in your relationships, or is it more because you have this beautiful beard and this physique and all of this wonderful body art? Like, is it more natural and romantic for you, or is it kind of the same thing?
I hope that it's organic to some extent.
Okay.
I definitely shoot for that. And I would say that, yeah, I think that I'm a physical person and I do relate on that level. And so that means that during the day, I don't want to use the term handsy because like that feels creepy, but like, am I, soft touching or holding hands or just trying to be close with my partner on a regular basis? Definitely. Because those things are important to me. And so I feel that I'm doing this is my intention, so I'm building this intention all day approach. And sometimes, hey, so it didn't lead to intimacy because life still happens and maybe there's no time for that. Everybody's tired.
Agreed.
Yada, yada, whatever happens. But did I enjoy intimacy with my partner throughout the day because I just prioritize being or feeling close to them? Definitely. And is that just a part of what I'm like as a person? Sure. But is it also something that I think about? And, if we're sitting on the couch and I'm like, this is too far, then I'll move closer. Or we're laying next to each other. And why is there, why am I cold? I should be warm right now. And you scoot a little closer. Like, you can prioritize those things without the necessity of just chasing it directly to intimacy. And to sex, let me say that, and still build intimacy throughout the day.
Well, so we need to get to a point in this conversation where we get a little bit of conflict in here, make it super interesting. One thing that I want to say before we move on is that not feeling a desire to be intimate, in my opinion, but let me just be me and be passionate. It's not normal. Like, it's not normal for either a man or a woman to not feel, at least on a semi-regular basis, the desire for intimacy and to have a strong libido. That's an indicator, from what my naturopath has told me, any research that I've done, that's an indicator of a lack of health and a hormonal imbalance, maybe improper eating, improper diet, no exercise, whatever the case may be. And so I look at a healthy life that way, and that desire and a healthy exchange with you and your partner as an indication of overall health. And I hear people, it's a joke, but 15% of people, only 15% of people would classify their sex life as normal. Everyone else is like, every 2 weeks, once a month. And I almost fell out of my chair when my wife said, majority of people every quarter, every 6 months or something. And I'm like, that can't be true. I can't even believe that can't be true. And I just want to say that in my opinion, and these podcasts are my opinion, so I get to do that, take it for what it's worth, but it's not normal. And so we, in a lean culture, fixing what bugs us, should be able to, with whatever we're going to use, we should be able to figure out that problem. not having intimacy in a relationship is a problem. And even if a woman doesn't have that same urge as often as a man, it's a problem. So what are we going to do? How are we going to fix what bugs us? How are we going to get past that and team together and collaborate and work on the team and like really come up with something, whether it's prayer, whether it's therapy, whether it's discussion, whether it's, reading books, whatever it is. It would be what I'm going to try to make my last comment is we don't have to suffer. We don't have to accept these things as normal. We can go find remarkable solutions. So, and I'd like to hear what you think, Brandon, and then whatever topic you want to use to close this out, boss. I'm loving this.
Going back to your comment about what's natural, or I can just think about, well, what do we want? Again, for men, if you have found that your libido isn't where it used to be, well, guess what? That your doctor can check your hormone levels and see if they could be or where they should be. And if it was a priority, maybe it wouldn't be something that you were scared to do, to go to the doctor and find out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes and it can be on either side of the relationship. Sometimes the husband has, ceased to be the aggressor in intimacy. Sometimes the wife has lost interest in intimacy.
Yep.
But again, if it's a priority, what are you doing to prioritize it? We've talked about like the men's side. Is there a route for checking hormones for females as well? Progesterone. Like there's so many different things that, hey, is everything balanced for you as well? Perhaps wherever you are in your age group or as you age, yep, there are things to be checked out. And if it's something that is important to you or something you want to prioritize, you would. So just putting that out there that although you might say this is natural or this is not natural. Well, it may be natural for where our bodies are or for where we are from an age standpoint. Yeah. But if something is a priority, can you do something different about it? Totally. Yeah. So I just kind of want to quantify that a little bit as well.
I think that's a better perspective. And the only thing I would add is that some of these hormones aren't just for libido. To your point, like they're for our heart. Some of our critical organ functions, things like that. So testosterone is critical for a man's heart, right? And women need a certain level, even though it's like 1/30th or 10th of what a man needs, they need testosterone too. So I love your point so that we can go get that checked and get professional medical advice. Love it.
Yeah, and I'll go back to one more time just because I feel like it rounds it out so well. The concept of attraction. Are we making a priority to make ourselves attractive to our partner? And so, as we age or as we become busy, if we feel like that connection is lacking in some ways, what are we personally doing to bring home sensuality or attraction or emotional connection? How are we building intimacy throughout the day with our partner? Do we have an action plan for that? And it sounds so stupid to say that, but I mean it. Do you have a plan, or do you just go home and hope that things will happen, and then when they don't, become frustrated or become this or that? Or are you the force that is, are you the one that's just driving the bus, and the bus is going to reach the destination because you've decided, hey, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be that person, and I'm going to show up at 100%, and she's going to notice.
Yeah, and your point, it just occurred to me as you were talking, as I was listening actively. If we put our finances and our health and our work and our jogging and our church meetings and our interactions with kids, everything on Outlook or a to-do list or a regular habit or in the background on our phones or on a sticky note or, I don't know, make a habit, whatever. And then we're like, no. Intimacy, relationships, flowers, it's unauthentic to do that. We can't do that. Everything else we can intentionally schedule, but we can't do that. That's not romantic. That's nothing like the movies, right? That's kind of silly. I mean, we shouldn't go overboard. Like you said, it's got to be somewhat spontaneous and organic and beautiful. But yeah, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure. If there was an adversary or somebody who is adversarial with us or somebody who wanted to see us fail or a devil or whatever in life, if there's somebody that's like, the antagonist in the story, they would want us to just not be intentional with these relationships. That's the only thing they'd have to get us to do to take us down and take us out of the game. What else, Brandon? Anything else you want to talk about to close this out? We've got as much time as you want, but we probably got 5 more minutes. So let's leave them wanting more, but let's finish strong, boss.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a topic deviation in the interest of something that I think is a pretty polarizing concept. Jealousy and insecurity, I think, is something that plagues probably just about everybody on some level.
Yep.
And even in going back to the conversation about looks, well, I like to say that I take care of myself, but is there somebody who's better looking and has, worked out harder and has better skin and straighter teeth out there? Of course there is. Of course there is. So from that standpoint, yes, I want to be, physically relevant, but is there going to be somebody that's more attractive than me? And should it be okay for my partner to be aware that this other person is attractive? Do they necessarily think they're more attractive than me? I don't know. That's up to them. I might think they're more attractive than me, and that might make me feel insecure. That's my partner? I don't know. But is it okay for them to look at another person and be like, wow, that man is beautiful? Or on the other side of the coin, of course, would it be okay for you to look at someone other than your partner or your spouse and think to yourself, this person is beautiful? Well, I say think to yourself. Well, we all think what we think, and no one really moderates that. But could you comment on it? Is there a way that you could comment on it that would be palatable to your partner? Just want to kind of put that out there from what do we think about that whole world? When we're talking about looks, isn't that part of the world?
Well, I was sitting over here just ready, guns a-blazing, like ready to have a comeback. But I always learn something when you talk. I think it goes back to the point you made earlier that if we objectify people, then objectifying somebody else, doing it twice, is bad. But if we appreciate beauty and the discipline and love and fine things, and we respect people, and we could just appreciate it, right? I don't think it's unhealthy at all. The other thing is I just did a podcast, I think it was on Monday, about the courage to be disliked. What somebody else does doesn't affect me. That's their task. What they think is their task. How they behave is their task. What I do is my task, right? And so I've been known to be jealous. Why am I being jealous? Well, that doesn't mean they're going to leave me. That doesn't mean they're going to cheat on me. That doesn't mean that I'm less significant, right? And even if you, and I should be careful saying this, but whether you're a man or a woman, there is a risk. I think we all know that the big risk there is that your husband or your wife gets, and most likely the husband gets addicted to pornography in an unhealthy way, or to looking at other people and objectifying them in an unhealthy way. And then that makes them think less of you because their neural pathways are set to not noticing true beauty. But back to your point, Brandon, you're talking about truly knowing and appreciating true beauty. You're not talking about base desire, taking, sexual objectification, I don't think. Because in that case, then you could say, well, if my husband looks at all these beautiful women, then I become less significant. But that behavior was wrong in the first place. If your husband is appreciating beautiful things, then he'll appreciate you as a beautiful thing too. I don't know. That's where I am with it. I see you smiling. Tell me, what are you thinking?
Man, 100 different things while you were saying that. So one of the things that I would say is there's a difference between, and I'm gonna introduce a metaphor here that I think is pretty strong, and then I'm going to use it all over the place. But so you go into a museum and there's a painting that is so beautiful to you that it makes your eyes water, and you realize that this is your favorite painting ever. Mm-hmm. And if you could have it in your house, you would, and you would look at it every day for the rest of your life before you went to sleep. When you woke up in the morning, it's your favorite, hands down. It's beautiful. But also, in this museum, if you turn your head to the left, there's another painting over there by another painter, an artist, and it's also beautiful, right? Of course it is. It's there in the museum. It's been recognized to be beautiful by the masses, and so there it is. So you should be able to say, this is beautiful. Yes, this is beautiful. It doesn't change the fact that this is your favorite painting for the rest of your life, hands down. it's beautiful. It doesn't replace this painting.
Yeah.
And so you talked about like pornography or the potential of becoming over involved with something like that. Well, are you using that as a replacement for sexuality?
Yeah,
Are you using your sexual energy on, looking at a computer or looking at your phone? And so throughout the day, you don't actually have intimacy to give to your spouse or your significant other because you're spending it elsewhere, like, a commodity that no longer exists by the time when it's time to create intimacy with your partner.
Yeah.
So I would go like, it's not your favorite is not replaced by something else that's beautiful, unless you take this off the wall and now you go and take that painting and put it up over here. You've replaced something that's really different. And so I would go back to like, well, what are we doing with those ideas? Are we replacing or are we appreciating? Because they're very different.
I love that, Brandon. Dang, that's so wonderful. Because like when you said, am I replacing that painting, or am I obsessing about that one painting, or am I going to steal that painting, or am I going to, like, what unnatural, like if you take anything to an unnatural level, right, it's wrong. But if it's appreciation, I totally agree with that. And I think that marriage therapists, and I've read this, right, marriage therapists and counselors and sex therapists will say, whether, no matter what somebody believes about like intimacy by oneself, like by themselves solo, or appreciating other things in marriage, no matter where they are in their belief system, a marriage counselor will say it's unnatural when pornography or doing things by themselves has become this unhealthy thing where it's their focus. They're obsessed with it. It's like being addicted to video games or drugs or whatever. It's a focus. It's obsessive. And you've replaced your spouse, that intimacy, with this. Then that is unnatural. It's always a best practice that and I'm saying in the books that I've read, they've said it's always the best case scenario when your partner, your spouse, is the focus of your sexual, visual appreciation of beauty outlet, meaning it's the focus of your connection. And it's not some fake imaginative world. It's not pornography. It's not doing things by yourself as an obsession, as the main focus, as a replacement. Yes, you can appreciate beautiful things in the world, but you need to be focusing, like you said, on your relationship. And I really like that balanced approach. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I just would be caution some of our younger couples, anybody coming up in construction that's wanting to have a healthy relationship so that they can be dynamic at work, fulfilled in life. Don't go obsessed and take things to an unnatural level. Don't do it with video games. Don't do it with TV. Don't do it with pornography. Don't do it with drinking. Don't do it with, doing things by yourself. Don't do it with these things, because you can go way off into this unnatural area. And like Brandon said, replace the beautiful things that you have. And when you replace those things, you ruin it. I've learned so much today. I swear to you, Brandon. I mean, you're remarkable, but I didn't think I'd get half as much of information that I got today. This is pretty cool. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
And you'll have to cut me off when it's time to be done, because as we say stuff, I just keep turning the wheels. I know you said 5 minutes before.
Well, let's have this be your last comment. There you go.
I appreciate that you said obsessing about things to an unnatural amount, because I feel that, and work with me on this one, and I'm going to go back into that realm of like, why this is taboo for everybody. As we're growing up and we start to hit puberty and, et cetera, a lot of our feelings become awakened. And right now in the world where pornography is so prevalent, or, so many different like images are prevalent, it's probably very likely that many of our young people stumble across pornography, and maybe they are using that as a shuttle for like exercising what they believe to be physical urges as a young person. Mm-hmm. And, that became popularized, I guess, in the 90s. And so a lot of people in our age group, that's something that's relatively normalized for us. So I do think that there are a lot of people that still keep up some of those habits. And I want to say about that, you mentioned, unhealthy amounts for people who, I'm not saying to anybody, hey, I judge you, don't ever do this, don't ever do that, any particular practice, because a lot of these things are human and they're the way that we grew up and were patterned. But are you using them in a manner that is a replacement? And so just to think about that as well when we're talking about the healthy, are we replacing something, or are we taking something away that will now no longer exist for our partner? Is it that? And so there may be other levels in which we choose to do things as autonomous human beings. But also, I would say, should you take into account the emotional concerns or needs of your significant other when it comes to stuff like that, how they might feel about it, understanding that, if you intend to or want to be honest with your significant other as a person, hey, maybe you should get a weigh in on how they feel about things like that. Just trying to say that there is a natural world out there that contains a lot of taboo things that we don't like to talk about. We want to be realistic, but also that doesn't just give us a free pass to do anything that we want. We still need to take into account the needs of the people that are important to us and prioritize those needs.
I agree. And also, to add on to what you said, if we're using one of those things to numb, like Brene Brown says, if we're unhappy in life and we're using it in an abusive way, like somebody drinking alcohol, for instance, to numb the real problem. And my last comment is, like let's say, for instance, that a male has, or a male and female, they have religious preferences or customs that say they never do anything by themselves. They never look at pornography. There's never any outlet. They don't look at anything else. And then the husband and wife aren't doing stuff together as their only outlet, as their only form of connection because they have dysfunction. Where's the problem solving in that? Where's the fix what bugs us? Where's the beautiful, remarkable lean culture and lean life? Where's the partnering? Where's the collaboration? Where's the prayer? Where's the solutions? Where's the brainstorming in that? Like, I think in my last message is just pleading for people. If there's a problem in the marriage, and if there are each of us have these different constraints, religion, upbringing, embarrassments, impressions of our body, whatever, all these different things, right? Circumstances. We might even have health conditions. We have all these things. How can we fit emotional and intimate connections in our relationships that are healthy? And if we don't have healthy, if we have dysfunction, why aren't we figuring it out? Why aren't we pushing forward and getting to a solution? And my plea, my challenge, and I'm going to ask you to close out and have the last word. What would you challenge the listeners today? But my challenge is figure it out. We are smart enough to figure this out. We are smart enough to create a remarkable life. And suffering, saying, well, we don't do anything for a quarter. I don't bring it up. She doesn't want to. I don't do this. I usually feel pissed off and pent up about things. That's not solving problems. That's suffering, and that's disrespectful to us and to everyone else, quite frankly, because we're going to transfer that frustration to other people. So what would you challenge our listeners today?
To figure out what you want for yourself and for your relationship, and then do what it takes to achieve that. Just like in our professional lives, we want to be a better manager, learn how to work with a team, learn how to teach and mentor. Of course, you can figure out another person or an employee. Of course, you can teach them better and spend more time. You need to calm yourself down to learn how to work with a team. But then, we go home and we're like, well, but I can't do any of that stuff here. We fight, we do this, we do that. We have conflict. Well, you have conflict with your project team. You have conflict with trade partners. You have all kinds of that guy that takes off his glasses every time you turn your back on him. Have you figured out a way to resolve that stuff because it's important to you and you want to be a professional?
Yeah.
Do you want to be good at your relationship? Do you want to be a good partner? Are you going to figure that out? Or are you just going to kind of, play the victim card and just be like, this situation happened to me, and this is how I feel about it, instead of I'm making this situation, or at least I'm trying to control and create the environment that I want to exist in, or are things just being handed to you?
I agree. Well, this has been thought-provoking, and I appreciate it. My comment to anybody listening is, I wouldn't be authentic to myself if I didn't tackle real problems. In construction, in our industry, we got a lot of people talking about integration, lots of people talking about lean, lots of people talking about safety, and I love it. But what kind of human being is going to be brought into those systems? Those systems what kind of person are they going to receive? You can plug, just like energy drained and unhealthy and miserable and pissed off people into these situations, into these systems, into lean, into integration, into operational control systems, into project management on our construction sites. But if they're not healthy and happy, they're at 60%, they're at 40%, they're at 70%. And I want to be able to talk. Thank you, Brandon, for talking today about these hard topics, because I want to be able to prepare on a fundamental level people to show up 100% and be the best and most remarkable version of themselves, so that then they can go do these remarkable things on the project sites and scale and affect others. And so that's my closing statement. Brandon, this has been remarkable.
Thanks very much. Hey, do we do plugs on this show? I don't know if that's a thing that we're into in any way. Or
do it right now. Do it right now. Let's get it done.
So just as a reference, and I can't recall if we brought this up before, along with the personal and professional development coaching I do with Oakland Construction and with Elevate Construction, I also do intimacy coaching for the Scottsdale Center for Sex and Relationship Therapy. And you can look them up online at that name as well, if you were interested in any services in that direction.
Well, thank you. So the vision for this is that everybody lives a remarkable life. We cannot be whole. And I just want to say that one more time. Tony Robbins says, if you look at your wheel, the wheel of life, you look at the different wedges on that wheel, finances, physical health, intimacy and relationships, your marriage, your family, work, everything else. And if you grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on that wheel, and you give yourself a 2 here, an 8 there, a 10 there, a 1 here, you have all these jagged edges. How fast and how far are we going to get on that kind of wheel? But even if we're at a 6 on all of those, if they're equally balanced all the way around, we can get momentum and roll and run and go 60 miles an hour. And then one day we can work to where we have 10s all the way around, or maybe even just 9s. And how much farther in life are we going to get if we do that? I think that's the vision. No, I don't think that. I know that that's the vision. And we want everybody to experience that kind of life. We hope that this content has been useful and healthy and wonderful and remarkable for you, because in the end, there's no reason to not live a remarkable life. And Brandon, say it with me. On we go.
On we go.
Please join us next time in elevating the entire construction experience for workers, leaders, and companies coast to coast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to share with your construction colleagues and help us spread the word by rating, subscribing, and leaving a review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate it. We'll catch you next time on the Elevate Construction Podcast.